Hi, my name is Pastor Apostle Government Channel. Today we're going to be reacting to Christian denominations family tree. Episode 2, History of Roman Catholicism and Eastern Orthodoxy. Matt Baker. Useful charts. Matt Baker reaction. Detailed brief breakdown of Christianity and Eastern Orthodoxy. Roman Catholic, Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church. Serbian Orthodox Church, Russian Orthodox Church. Ancient Church of the East, Indian Orthodox Church, and Hillsong Church, and Twin Rivers Center. This aspect, the Church of the East and Oriental Orthodoxy, both split over differences in Christology Fifth, century, while, the, Eastern, Orthodox, Church, and the Catholic Church separated in the East-West Schism, 1054, Protestant Tism, split into numerous denominations from the Catholic Church in the Reformation era. 16th century. Following the age of discovery. 15th to 17th century, Christianity expanded through out the world via missionary work, evangelism, immigration, and extensive trade. Christianity played a prominent role in the development of Western civilization, particularly in Europe, from late antiquity and the Middle Ages, the three main branches of Christianity are Roman Catholicism, 1.3 billion people, Protestantism, $625 million to 900 million, and Eastern Orthodoxy, $230 million. People. While other prominent branches include include Oriental Orthodoxy, 60 million people. Restorationism. $35 million people, and the Church of the East, 600,000. Eastern Orthodoxy, also known as Eastern Orthodox, Christianity, or Byzantine Christianity, is one of the three major branches of Chalcedonian Christianity, alongside Catholicism and Protestantism, characterized by its emphasis on tradition, seven sacraments, and hierarchical structure of self-governing churches. The Roman Catholic Church, also known as the Catholic Church, is the largest Christian church with over 1 billion members worldwide, and its headquarters are in Vatican City. According to research, the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church, Ethiopia Orthodox Tewahedo Beta Christian, is the largest of the Oriental Orthodox churches, one of the few Christian churches in Africa originating before European colonization of the continent. Ethiopia, non-Orthodox, the Ethiopian Orthodox, Tawahedo, church dates back to the Christianization of the kingdom of Aksum in 330 CE. According to research, and has between 36 million and 51 million adherents in Ethiopia. The Serbian Orthodox Church's origins lie in the Christianization of the Serbian lands, which began in the 9th century with Byzantine Empire's influence and the work of missionaries like Cyril and Methodius, leading to the adoption of Eastern Orthodoxy.
Hi, this is Matt Baker. Welcome to episode 2 in my series on the family tree of
the Russian Orthodox.
In episode 1, we looked at the origins of Christianity.
Church RC Ruskaya Pravoslavnaya Circle, also officially known as the Moscow Patriarchate,
were and which produced the Nicene Creed. Finally, we looked at the next 2 councils in which we started to get some smaller branches of Christianity splitting off from the rest, such as the Church of the East and the Oriental Orthodox churches. So in today's video, we're going to switch gears and focus on 2 of the largest branches of the tree, the Roman Catholic Church and the Eastern Orthodox
exactly.
Church.
Patriarchate, Moskovsky Patriarchate.
We'll be looking at how each group is organized, as well as the history
is a autocephalous Eastern
developments involving the church in Ukraine.
Orthodox
But first, I want to point
Christian
out that this series,
church. It has 194
as many of you already know, the Easter harvest is
diocese inside Russia. That's true.
and how they differ from one another.
The primate
What I really appreciate about Rainbow Harvest is that while its host, Joshua, belongs to one particular
of Moscow,
he approaches every topic from
the primate of the ROC
So, for example,
is
since I'm focusing
the
on
Patriarch of
Eastern Orthodox,
Moscow and all Ruth,
a very unbiased video about these same 2 groups. So,
the ancient church of the East,
on what I'm discussing today, I definitely recommend that you watch his video after this one.
is an Eastern Christian denomination.
Before we jump into today's topic, let me first address a few things that came up in the comment section on episode 1. First of all, the word extinct.
Exactly.
For example, I indicated
That branched
that the Arian Christians
from the
While many people pointed out that the Jehovah's Witnesses are very Arian in their theology, which is true. I therefore want to clarify that whenever I show a group going extinct on this chart, I'm always referring to the
Syrian Church
not
of the
to
East.
similar groups that may arise later. This is especially important with regard to Jewish Christians.
In 1954,
Comments from people pointing out that Messianic Jews,
under the leadership
again, this is correct. However, Messianic Jews do not trace a line all the
Oh.
way to the original Jewish Christians from ancient times.
Ma
Messianic
Toma
Jews are
Doma,
recent converts.
the Malakara
In order to make
Orthodox
clear,
Syrian
I decided to change the label Jewish Christians to Ebionite Christians.
Church,
Ebionites being one of the
MRSC,
Christian
also known
similar to or the same as the Nazarenes. I also
as
received
the
several requests
Indian
to include the Samaritans and the Parabites. So let's go ahead and add them to the chart. Now, some people, including the Samaritans themselves, think that the Samaritan religion is
Orthodox.
a continuation of the religion followed by the northern kingdom of Israel prior
Church.
to the Babylonian exile.
IOC.
However, from an
Or
academic
simply,
perspective,
as the Valkara
the
Church
Samaritans emerged early
is a
in the Second Temple period.
autocephalous.
450 BCE, they built their own
Is an autocephalous.
Gerizim. Now, there's a lot more I could
Oriental.
say about Samaritans, but since this series is focused on Christianity, I'll perhaps have to make a separate video about them at
Exactly. He does.
Now, what about the Karaites?
Sure.
If you haven't heard about them, basically,
Oriental. Or
Karaites are Jews
Hello.
who do not accept the teachings of the early rabbis, as recorded in the Talmud. According to some people, they are the direct descendants of
Church
Jesus.
headquartered
However, the scholarly consensus
in
is that
Dev-
this is not the case.
Val-
Because the Karaites
Locale
actually emerge until the medieval
near
which means
Kot-
that it is better to see them as an early break
Siam
from rabbinic Judaism, rather than being completely distinct. Another such right-wing
in India. It serves India's St. Thomas.
Again, some people theorize that this group can trace their origins to the However, it is clear from their language and customs that they did originally
The Karaite Jews too.
to rabbinic Jews, but then this connection was severed.
Like that in my Jewish field aspect as
They were
well.
once again reunited with the rest of Judaism in modern times. Okay, let's now turn our attention back to early Christianity. I mentioned last time something called the Pentarchy. The Pentarchy emerged in some sort
Saint
of official way around the
Thomas
time of the Council of Nicaea. Basically,
Christian.
there were 5 major cities that were key centers of Christianity within the Roman Empire. Originally, there
Also known as
Alexandria,
Nazarani
but
Nazarani
Constantinople became
population.
of the Roman Empire. It became important as well. And then there was, of course, Jerusalem, where the whole thing began. So by 451, the leaders of the church recognized 5 key cities. Each was called a patriarchate because each was governed
According
by
to
a special bishop called a patriarch, meaning father. Now, I changed
Tradition.
a little bit to make what happened after the Council of Chalcedon a bit more clear. Basically, the majority of Christians in Alexandria, Egypt, and in Antioch, Syria, did not agree with the Chalcedonian decision. They therefore broke away from the rest and eventually became known as Oriental Orthodox. It is distinct from Eastern Orthodox. These days, the 2 largest churches within Oriental Orthodoxy are the Coptic Orthodox
Church, yeah, Coptic Roman Church,
Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo,
which I talked about
independent from
already. The notes.
However, I should point out that the church in Ethiopia has its own
Agreement Fires.
that goes all the way back to ancient times. And as I discussed in my series on Who Wrote the Bible, Ethiopian Christians have a unique version of the Bible that includes several extra books that are not found in most.
These
Also, since I mistakenly didn't show a photo of the Ethiopian patriarch last time, I wanted to show him this time. This is Patriarch Abu Matthias, the spiritual leader of around 40 million
communities originated in the missions of Thomas the Apostle.
Christians in Alexandria and Antioch became Oriental Orthodox. A minority did not. That's why
Sure.
I also showed dotted lines that stay within the Eastern
Orthodox branch.
which have now decided to
Look at the Bulgarian Orthodox
the
Church thing.
Christians in these areas that sided with Eastern Orthodoxy were originally known as Melkites.
In the first
That term will pop up again later, so I thought I'd point out the meaning now. But here's the thing.
century,
600 CE, Alexandria,
Circa
Antioch, and Jerusalem
52 AD.
it Islam. Therefore, these
employs
became less important
the man Colorado, an Indian form.
Rome and Constantinople as the 2 main patriarchs. Therefore, a bit of a power struggle eventually developed between Rome and Constantinople. On the one side, there was the fact that Rome, as the original seat of imperial power, had been given, back in the early days of the Pentarchy, a sort of precedence over the other four cities. However, on the other side, there was the fact that Constantinople was now the seat of imperial power, and it was the emperor in Constantinople that now appointed the Latin Pope.
Syria, the liturgical rite. Hillsong Church.
Constantinople drifted further and further apart as Europe became divided between
commonly known as
Empire in the west and the Byzantine Empire in the east.
Hillsong.
This came to a head in 1054.
Which, by the way, is my church, is a
schism.
Charismatic.
Schism can be blamed on many different things, but I'd like to point out just two. One
Christian megachurch.
Over whether or not
And
its the Pope was the head
Christian Association of Churches
Constantinople. The Pope was
based in Australia.
In other words, he held
The original
honor, but in
church
terms he held no more power than the Patriarch of Constantinople. However, according to Rome, the Pope did have actual authority over the entire church. The other major difference
was established
the Nicene Creed, which I discussed in episode 1. In fact, I created a bit of a stir because, as an example, I showed a version of
Hill, Sydney
these days by Catholics and Protestants, rather than the one used by Eastern Orthodox Christians.
Sydney.
The difference is this line
New South Wales.
known as the filioque.
The filioque, I've never heard of that.
So, as
still learning that now.
Protestants say that the Holy Spirit proceeds from the Father and the Son, whereas the Eastern Orthodox Christians say that he comes from the Father only.
Hills.
These differences and many others, East and West, parted
Christian Life Center.
Now, I should make it clear that it would be incorrect to say that the Roman Catholic Church and the Eastern Orthodox Church started only in 1054. Instead,
Brian.
it's accurate to say that they
Houston.
started in the first century and that they were interrelated up until 1054. So what about the popes then?
And his wife,
From
Bobby Houston, in 1983.
Well, the difference is that Catholics claim that those popes were the leaders of the entire Christian church, whereas
Twin Rivers
Eastern Orthodox
Center,
these popes were simply the bishops of Rome, who, as I mentioned,
was birthed in 1992 from the heart.
Okay, so let's now look at how each of these churches are organized today, starting with the Eastern Orthodox Church, which sees itself as a single church, but can actually be divided into 15 equal churches, called autocephalous churches. Basically, being autocephalous means that the leader of that church
of people
doesn't have to answer to anyone higher up, other than God, of course. However,
exactly.
the Patriarch of Constantinople is given
tell us so far to the Christian structure with that.
This is why the Patriarch of Constantinople is called the Ecumenical Patriarch. Ecumenical meaning
Ecumenism
group. Currently, that position is held by Bartholomew
with exactly
Initially, the Eastern
only the
Orthodox
first
Church consisted of only
with
5
a desire to
churches.
help
These were the 4
the community
patriarchates from the Pentarchy, as well as the Church of Cyprus, which has always been seen as being independent all the way back to ancient times. However, over time, more
just
churches were added by
a handful of people. It has grown.
Serbian Orthodox Church in 1219, and
We'll talk about it as well.
Russian Orthodox Church
Exactly.
in 1589. I say most importantly because nowadays the Russian Orthodox Church is by far the largest of the various Eastern Orthodox churches. It is currently led by Kirill, who holds the title Patriarch of Moscow. The Church of Greece and the Romanian Orthodox Church were the next two Eastern Orthodox churches to become autocephalous in 1850 and 1890.
Ukraine, Greece.
After each became independent from the Ottoman. The remaining 5 churches all became autocephalous in the 20th century, or in the case of the Macedonian Church, just last year, in 2002. Which leaves 2 gray areas to discuss.
to today.
The first being the Orthodox Church in America, which originated as a branch of the Russian Orthodox Church. The Patriarch of Moscow currently recognizes the
Where
Church as being
we
Orthodox, but
have
the Patriarch of Constantinople does not.
amazing
When it comes to Ukraine, we get the opposite situation. There, the Patriarch of Constantinople recognizes the Orthodox Church of Ukraine, but the Patriarch of Moscow does not. And it's even more complicated than that. And that's because the history of Russia and Ukraine is, well, a bit complicated. You see, both countries trace their origins back to a medieval state called Kievan Rus, which was centered on the city of Kiev. When Christianity first reached that area, the church there is the Orthodox Church. However, over time, Kievan Rus disintegrated, and instead the city of Moscow
Moskovsky.
It was at this point that
Kievan
the
Rus,
Orthodox Church was established, replacing the Ruthenian Orthodox Church. Eventually, all Eastern Orthodox Christians in Ukraine ended up under the jurisdiction of Moscow. However, after the fall of the Russian Empire, some churches in Ukraine declared independence and started calling themselves the Ukrainian Autocephalous Orthodox Church, or UAOC. This church operated separately from the UOC, which still came under the jurisdiction of Moscow. This is why later the letters MP were added to the name, to make it clear that it is part of the Moscow Patriarchate. To complicate matters further, a third Ukrainian church emerged after the fall of the Soviet Union. This one called itself the UOC-KP, the KP standing for Kiev Patriarchate. Now, obviously, having three different churches in one
purpose
is
and direction.
So
through.
In 2018, there was an attempt to merge all three churches into a single church, which would be
incredible
as the Orthodox Church of Ukraine.
programs and services
and now
and outward
of Eastern Orthodox
and services
in Ukraine
outward.
However, it wasn't entirely successful. For one thing, there are
services, our visions, and materials.
Invasion of Ukraine in 2022, these are becoming less. And officially, the UOCMP has now cut ties with the Russian Orthodox Church. Secondly, there was also a disagreement between the new
to connect
OCU, Epiphanius, and the former leader of the UOCMP, Philaret. This disagreement led to Philaret attempting to revive the UOCMP, although so far he's had only
build and equip people
for
success in all areas of life
is now the main Orthodox Church in Ukraine. Now, before we move on, I do want to
working
growing rift between the ecumenical Patriarch of Constantinople and the Patriarch of Moscow.
There's a lot of that happening in the news.
Moscow has seen itself as being the third Rome, and since the Russian Orthodox Church is by far the largest of the various Eastern Orthodox churches, it has at times been seen as a sort of rival to the leadership of Constantinople. In fact, the ecumenical patriarch recognized the new Orthodox Church of Ukraine. Moscow decided to break communion with Constantinople, which basically means that they're no longer on good speaking terms. This was made even worse when Patriarch Kirill came out as a strong supporter of the war on Ukraine, whereas Patriarch Bartholomew strongly opposed it.
Exactly, because the Orthodox and Kirill was the and Philaret as well, the Russian things and the Ukrainian Church and the Orthodox Church in America comes from there as well. They even come from each other.
Represent more than 50% of all Christians. Now, when most people refer to the Roman Church, what they're really referring
every day
to is the Latin
of
which is
the week,
one of 24 churches that make up the entire Roman Church. The other 20 churches are Eastern Catholic churches, which we'll be talking about shortly. But since 99% of Catholics belong to the Latin Church,
1.3 billion
to
subscribers.
how the church organizes those.
Our church programs, food outlets.
So, unlike how the Eastern Orthodox churches are primarily based in single countries, with perhaps some churches overseas and for expats, the Roman Catholic Church is spread all over the world. So what they do is divide the world into a few hundred
community cafe and
so, for example, although I'm not a Catholic, I live within the Catholic province of Vancouver, which includes most of British Columbia. Within that ecclesiastical province are 5 dioceses, and each one of those dioceses is led by a bishop. However, one of those dioceses
care services,
led by an archbishop.
We endeavor
In addition to being in charge of the
to
is also in
show our
Now, within each diocese are a bunch of parishes or local churches, each run by a
faith
priest. So the closest Catholic church
by our actions and see hundreds
although I also happen to live very close to a cathedral. Growing up, I was
of people
cathedral
every day.
an extra big and fancy church. Well, that's not quite the case. Each diocese has
100 people every week.
It's called that because that's where you'll find the bishop or archbishop.
Find hope
Of course, the
and
most
support.
of the Catholic Church is that above all the bishops and archbishops in the hierarchy is the Pope, who is the leader of the church. That person is currently
According to research.
who is also the bishop in charge
Now let's
of Rome.
do
So basically, whoever is in charge of Rome is in charge of
the reaction.
Now, like I mentioned earlier, in addition to the main Latin Church, there are also 20
I'll tell you my report
which are on Eastern
for
Catholic.
the
These
video.
are from the main church, but are still under the jurisdiction of the Pope. Of the 23 Eastern Catholic churches, I am going to point out just the 10 largest.
You can do that, right?
Why?
This ancient church of the East.
All trace their origins to the Church of the East, which I mentioned earlier.
Do you know that?
Basically, what happened is that in 1552, there was a schism in the Church of England that resulted in some congregations remaining in the Church of the East. These are the ones that became the Syrian Church of the East and the breakaway ancient Church of the East. But at the same time, there were other congregations that decided to join the Catholic Church instead. These people have been held
My mom told me.
Then there are the St. Thomas Christians from India. These Christians trace their origins back to the Apostle Thomas, who supposedly traveled all the way to India in the 1st century. At some point, though, the
True.
Christians in India
8052.
with the Church of the East. But then later, some joined the Oriental Orthodox churches,
Churches.
becoming known as the
Indian Orthodox Church, which I talked about.
Others joined the
Catholic Church.
becoming known as the Syro-Malabar
Catholic Church.
The Syro-Malabar
Cara Church.
also based in
Also basically
consists of congregations that broke away
from
the
Indian Orthodox.
So
Yeah.
note that there are 2 different Eastern Catholic churches based in India.
There are, aren't there?
The Malabar one follows Eastern Syrian tradition.
True, if I can research that.
Syro-Malabar one follows Western Syrian traditions. The largest Eastern Catholic Church is actually the Ukrainian Greek Catholic Church, with over 5 million members. This church traces its roots back to the Ruthenian Orthodox Church that I mentioned earlier. So basically, back in the 1500s, there were some Christians in Ukraine that didn't want to join the Russian
Macedonian Orthodox Church comes from the Serbian Orthodox Church.
instead.
Holy Orthodox
Also
Church of Czechoslovakia.
Greek Catholic Church, but it
No,
actually
this is
has
from
nothing
Romania.
to do with the Ruthenian Orthodox Church.
We get to that
It
in that
actually
video.
formed when certain congregations broke away from the
Serbian Orthodox Church.
Then there's the Armenian Catholic Church, which,
Okay.
I guess, is based on those who broke away from the main
Armenian
Church, which
Church.
is associated with Oriental Orthodoxy. That leaves us with the Coptic Catholic Church, which broke away from the Greek Orthodox Patriarchate in
He probably needs to read this.
which
Probably needs to refix that. that could be right, that could not be right, but you need to fix it.
We now have way more than 5 patriarchs for 5 cities. So as I mentioned last time, there's an Oriental Orthodox patriarch of Alexandria, who
known as Pope George II.
There's also a Greek Orthodox.
The Greek one has a
now you know
Peter
there's
II.
a third patriarch of Alexandria too, a Catholic.
And then there's Isaac Sidrak.
In Antioch,
There's
even more.
another patriarch of
There's the
Alexandria.
Orthodox patriarch and the Greek Orthodox.
Patriarch of
But there's also
Antioch is Patriarch Amos II, John the Tenth, the Cara Baptist of Ryan, Ignatius Joseph the First, Ignatius Apsi, the Patriarch of Antioch.
Actually located in
Turkey, yeah.
most of history.
Most of Israel is associated with Syria. It's true, like in the Book of
In
Acts.
Rome, of course, it's simple. There's just one
Patriarch.
Francis. And in Constantinople, it's mostly simple.
Simple.
There's mainly just
Bartholomew the First.
spiritual leader and spiritual church.
Patriarch.
Though technically, the Armenian church has a patriarch.
Two. Simon II
In
Michelle.
Jerusalem, there are 3 patriarchs. There's the main patriarch, who is Eastern Orthodox, but
Is
there's
he
also a Catholic
Theophilus
patriarch
III,
who represents the
Pia
Catholic
Bautista
Church, as
Pisava,
well as an Armenian
Pisava.
patriarch.
And now
So that takes
the
care of the official branches of the Roman Catholic and Eastern Orthodox churches.
churches.
But before I go,
Before he goes,
a few unofficial or independent branches. In 1870, the Roman Catholic Church held a council that is now known
Yep.
as Vatican I.
Do you know
One
that?
of the things that the council decided was that the Pope is infallible. Now, this doesn't actually mean that the Pope never makes mistakes or that he has the power to radically change church doctrine. It actually only applies to special statements that are clearly made ex cathedra, meaning from the chair. Well, there were some Catholics that disagreed with the idea of papal infallibility, among other things. And there happened to be an archbishop in the Dutch city of Utrecht who had already gone independent. So basically, after Vatican I, a bunch of other priests joined with that archbishop to form the Old Catholic Church, also known as the Church of Utrecht. Today, they are led by this man here. Something similar happened in the 1960s, following the council known as Vatican II. One of the main things to come out of that council was the decision to hold Mass.
So that the councils came.
Instead.
The Pope isn't felt.
Again, there were some
Pope
Catholics who
disagreed with very felt.
decisions.
He has always made mistakes.
This time, those who separated and formed independent Catholic churches became known as sedevacantists.
And one of the churches that come from that?
Latin for empty chair.
Empty chair.
Basically, these Catholics believe that the office of Pope has been vacant.
Has been vacant since Vatican II.
One of the main sedevacantists.
So one of the other things in our videos.
Congregation of Mary Immaculate
Queen Nebraska. Mary Immaculate
The
Queen.
Eastern Orthodox Church also has independent
Branches.
There, the separatists are
called
known as Old
Calvinists.
or True Orthodox. The main issue for them was the switch.
Put a link in the description to each channel, a link to the original video in the description, put the link to each channel in the description, put the link to my channel, so you can see my reaction to it and watch it for yourselves. Anyway,
in Romania and
see how my answers
okay,
came.
so that was a look at the Roman
Anyway, don't forget to comment, like, share, subscribe.
branches of Christianity.
Watch, don't forget to comment, like, share, subscribe to my channel, Cross the River Pastor for now. Watch my videos, subscribe to my channel, Cross the River Pastor for now.
This is where the tree starts to
Got 2 more Christian movies aspects for Anglican Reform.
that there will be
And,
emphasis on the Protestants and Restoration before we're done. Episode 3 is likely to come out mid-March.
We're going to do that one
So
next.
then,
We're doing episode 3, doing the next Christian release aspect, followed by the next Christian release aspect, followed by a holiday video. I'll update you when that comes out eventually.